Can I close your door so that-
Yes, you may. I'll turn it down too, so sorry. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just letting a few more people join in. We'll be starting in probably about 30 seconds. Welcome everyone to our November data meeting. Um, my name is Aaron Bruff. I'm the Director of Data and Statistics here at the Utah State Board of Education. Do really appreciate all of you for being here and the work and dedication that you do. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Nicole. Here's the agenda. So announcements about the 2026 LEA data meeting dates. That'll be from Calista, special education updates from LEA. We have the final graduation rates for cohort 2025. That's from David Mackey and Calista Glenn. And then an update on the SOAR report. That'll be from Riley. The District of Residence and School district review from Riley. And then the December 1 submission training from basically data and statistics team. So with that said, um, again, everyone, thank you for being here, and let's turn the time over to Calista.
Okay, you can go to the next slide. This is just a quick announcement. We've been sending these dates out at the bottom of the last few agendas, but just in case anybody wasn't aware of that, we wanted to give people a preview of what the meeting dates will be for the next calendar year. So starting in January, we will not have this meeting next month. We will have the December submission, but we basically won't be having an LEA data meeting. So the next time we will meet is January 22nd. So we wanted to give you all of these dates to plan ahead for next year. And these are both on the agendas that we send out, and then we will send these slides out as well. There's a couple months where we don't have meetings. Most of the meetings fall on the Thursday time, like today. There's the Spring Data Conference, which I believe is a Wednesday. Um, So yeah, we will send this out so you guys can plan for next year. And that's all I have on that item. Okay, I'll turn the time to Malia.
Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I have three things covered today. First one is following up on last month's meeting about the alternate assessment participation threshold, aka the 1% cap. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a review, if any of you weren't here last month or just need a reminder of what this is. So as a state, we are not supposed to exceed having more 1% of our students who take an assessment take it using an alternate assessment. And that was enacted in every ESSA, elementary, and I don't know, the reauthorization a few years ago. So the we are so that is a requirement for us as a state. However, we can't put a cap on LEAs, how much you test, what percent of your students you test with the alternate assessment. But if you as an LEA go over 1%, we have to require you to submit a justification letter. And so right now, we actually sent out notifications to special ed directors by yesterday. So the LEAs that have to do this justification letter, your special ed director has received notification by now. And the justification letters are going to be due by January 5th. And this, one of the things that's required in the letter is to include current year alternate assessment projections. How many students, what percent of your students you expect to take the alternate assessment. Next slide, please. Okay, and so what this means for you as data managers, data specialists, we would love to see it if you are helping out your special ed directors with analyzing your current year data to calculate your projected current year alternate assessment rate, as well as to collect and submit required documentation to the Utah Program Improvement Planning System. Next slide, please. Okay, so the calculation for the alternate assessment, you'll want to do the calculations separately for each subject area, language arts, math, and science. The language arts and math includes students in grades 3 through 10, and for science, it includes students in grades 4 through 10. So the numerator for this is all the students who you expect to complete an alternate assessment in that subject area. Complete enough of the assessment that they will have a valid proficiency level assigned. And then for the denominator, it's all the students who you expect to complete any of the three summative assessments, DLM, RISE, or Utah Aspire Plus. And again, it's the students who you expect will complete enough of the assessment that they will have a valid proficiency level assigned. So if you already know the student is going to be opted out, then they don't get included in the denominator. Next slide, please. Okay, and then this year we're going to have some new data that's required to be included as part of the justification letter. So one of the things is not just the count of students who you expect to take the alternate assessment, but we'd also like a breakout of the count of students who are qualified to take the alternate assessment. So this includes students that you already know are going to be opted out, students who you don't expect to take the test. And we want that count broken out by disability type. And then next, we have to do an analysis of whether or not there's disproportionality by student group of students taking the alternate assessment. And the student groups that we have to look at are by racial ethnic group, by English learner status, and by low incomes status. So we've done an analysis from the state level for each LEA that's going to have to do a justification letter to see if there's any likely disproportionality. And so that is part of the notification that your special ed director got if you're one of the LEAs that has to do a justification letter. There's only 4 LEAs that are going to have to do this. And I'll have a little more information in the next couple slides. But because there's so few that have to do this, there are only 4 LEAs. I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time going over this in great detail today. So if you are one of those 4 LEAs, feel free to reach out to me if you want to dig into how the calculations are done or how you might go about doing your root cause analysis, things like that. I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one to go over this. Next slide, please. So these are our alternate assessment rates this year. We went over 1% in all 3 subject areas. So we have some additional requirements this year, and those were covered in last month's meeting. So if you want to see what those are, you can go back to last month's recording, last month's slides, or reach out to me and I can provide that for you. Next slide, please. Okay, and this year, the number of LEAs that have to submit a justification letter is 53. And then 4 of the LEAs are also going to have to do that root cause analysis for the disproportionality piece. Next slide, please. Okay, so as data managers, specialists, how we'd like you to help with that disproportionality piece is to help reviewing the data in the calculation. If you want to review it for accuracy, by all means, please do. And I'm happy to go over the details of how the calculation's done to help you with that. The calculations do follow what was recommended, set forth by the National Center on Educational Outcomes. And this is a link where you can read about it. And then also there's a spreadsheet tool that you can use where you can plug your numbers in to get results in that spreadsheet without having to reinvent the wheel. And then this final bullet point is some guidance for how you might go about examining disproportionality. Next slide, please. Okay, and then just in brief, the disproportionality calculation. So for the LEAs that go over 1% and have to do the justification letter, we've uploaded a data set to UPIPS, which includes information about what your LEA's alternate assessment participation rate is for the LEA and by school, and then it shows which students it is that actually got included in the numerator to help your special ed director with which data to analyze. And then there's 3 tabs in there related to the disproportionality. So one of them, the disproportionality tab, includes the results of the disproportionality calculation and just kind of summary information, whether or not your LEA is flagged for any groups, what group that is. And then information, we do have some some minimum requirements, minimum N sizes and cell sizes. And so if your LEA would be flagged, but you didn't meet the minimum N and cell size, you'll find some columns in there that indicate that you didn't meet the minimum requirements. Next slide, please. Okay, and so the disproportionality methodology tab explains the main components of the calculation methodology, which data we used, the risk ratios, what our threshold is, the minimum requirements, and then how confidence intervals are applied to determine that likely disproportionality piece. And then finally, the third tab, Dispro Ags by Year tab, gives you a copy of the data used in the calculation if you'd like to try to check, replicate the calculations. We did go with the recommendation to use 3 years of data for these calculations, so that tab includes all 3 years of data broken out separately, whereas on that first disproportionality tab, the data for the 3 years is combined. Next slide, please. And then for the root cause analysis, just kind of some broad suggestions of things you might look at. First of all, just reviewing the student data for accuracy. Was the student correctly identified as 1%? Was the student's EL status, economic disadvantage status, or race, ethnicity reported correctly? So if you're flagged for a certain racial ethnic group and then you find that, oh gosh, well, we reported the race wrong, then that's a contributing factor to why you have likely disproportionality. Then the next one is just kind of reviewing some participation and proficiency data over time. If there's something weird that happened in your participation on alternate assessments or your proficiency on alternate assessments from one year to the next, it might be something to dig into further, that maybe it's a root cause analysis that suggested or that contributed to the higher rate of alternate assessment participation among a particular student group. And then finally, contextual factors in the school or community that could explain high rates of identification or some shifts in identification. And in Utah, we are well aware people with their big hearts, big families. We have families that will adopt kids from certain countries, and so you might have a rural area where you don't expect to have such a high rate in a particular student group, but that one family that adopts a bunch of kids, or that one family just moved into your rural area, or this can affect charters. This can even affect large LEAs. So that's the type of thing you'd look at as far as contextual factors. Next slide. And this is where you find more information about the ESSA 1% cap information. The links for the disproportionality pieces were on a previous slide. Next slide, please. Okay, and questions about that can go to Tracy as far as the justification letter requirements, and then me for data questions. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next item is about the annual private school proportionate share data collection. In past years, I referred to this as the parentally placed in private school data collection, but we're going to shifting that language, calling it private school proportionate share. Next slide, please. So this applies to districts. So charters are exempt. And the reason is because it's all about where private schools are located. So it's districts have their boundary, and if a private school is located in your boundary, then you're responsible for the data for that private school. And then so that just doesn't happen with charters. And this applies to all districts, not just the districts that have charters, private schools within your boundaries, because for the districts that don't have private schools, that meet the threshold for this, we still need you to go in and just certify that you have looked and checked there are no private schools in your district, or maybe you have private schools but there's no qualifying students, and so we would just need you to certify that you've reached out to those charter schools and let them know that about the requirements for this. And these are some links, the special ed rule that refers to this, as well as a technical assistance document about it. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the collection this year, we are going to collect it through UPIPS, Utah Program Improvement Planning System. And we have a whole new proportionate shared dashboard in there for collecting this data. So non-profit private schools are the private schools in particular that we are concerned about for this. For-profit private schools don't qualify for this. Next slide, please. Okay, and then districts. So if you're a district with no nonprofit private schools, you still have to do this. If you're a district with nonprofit private schools, but you don't have any special ed students, then you still need to do this. Log into UPIPs. Your special ed director, there's a meeting happening today. They'll be getting training on exactly what to do if they fit into one of these two categories. And this is the majority of our districts. Next slide, please. Okay, and then, so this is information about that meeting. So the district special ed directors and business administrators have been invited to attend a virtual training today at 3. The meeting's also going to be recorded, so if those of you who are here want to also check out that meeting, you can work with your special ed director or business administrator, someone who is on the invite for that virtual training, to find out the link for that recording and watch it later. So the training is going to include data, program, and fiscal requirements regarding private school students. And yeah, so you can coordinate with your special director to watch the recording if you're interested. And then also, it would be very much appreciated if you reach out to them and see if they need any help with any of the reporting. Next slide, please. Okay, and then my last topic today is the new alternate assessment teacher ID fields on the Scrum record are ready for collection at this point. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, I think I first presented on these in the Spring Data Conference in April. But we wanted to add these 3 fields in order to help with rostering students to teachers in the alternate assessment system. So the rostering can happen through the OneRoster API rather than having to do it manually, which is really time consuming for your LEA staff. Staff will still have to create teacher user accounts, but the remainder of the work to roster the teachers would no longer be required. And that's being replaced with just entering those teacher IDs into your SIS Scrum records. So if the teacher ID fields are entered correctly and entered early in the school year, another outcome of adding these fields is that it'll allow teachers access to student score reports earlier in the school year. So teachers will be able to begin administering alternate assessment benchmarks earlier. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what the detailed field descriptions in the UTREC specifications say, the description for these 3 fields. They are all conditionally required. So it's the students who are marked 1% that we're going to expect to see the teacher ID fields. Students who are marked 1% and who are in one of the DLM tested grade level. Next slide, please. So this is the actual validation. So there's a validation warning, 62 or S2.630W, which, so if the Scrum record has the 1% flag marked and the student is in grades 3 through 11, and then we're going to expect the ELA and math teacher ID fields to be blank. And then if the student is in grades 4 through 11, we're going to expect the science field to be blank. And there are 3 separate fields because you could absolutely have different teachers administering the different subject area tests. And then only if something is entered into that field, then we're going to have a second validation, which is a fatal error if the value that was entered into that field can't be matched to a valid teacher ID in Cactus. So if you get that fatal error, either the ID was entered wrong onto that Scrum record, or you'll need to check to make sure that the teacher's information in Cactus is there. Next slide, please. Okay, and so this is where you'll find information on these fields in the UTREC specifications. Next slide, please. And right now, so I said these are ready for collection. So we have these fields set up in the data collector only at this point. So if you submit this data to UTREX It is going to show up in your examine file. However, we don't have it yet loading all the way through into the Utrex tables or into the One Roster API. So we're still working on that piece. And then we're also, now that we're close enough to start initiating the next steps with our DLM vendor to import the teacher information into their system, that'll be another next step. So at this point, I am not able to tell you when to expect that teacher information to show up in DLM or even if it's going to happen this year. But I will continue to come to you with updates about this in subsequent meetings throughout the next year. Next slide, please. Okay, and that's it. I didn't put contacts on there. Contacts for those DLM teacher IDs, same as for the alternate assessment, the SO 1% cap. Tracy for DLM questions, and myself for the UTREX questions. Thank you.
Okay, I will be talking about the final cohort grad rate for 2025. So you can go to the next slide, please. So just a few announcements. We did run the final grad rate with the finalized October data. LEAs were sent Move It files on November 10th. So if you were not notified about that or you don't have access to the distribution folders in Move It, you can basically put in a help desk ticket if you think you should have access or contact Emily Ng at USBE. Otherwise, you can find the person who does have access and they can download and give you a copy. Additionally, though, we will be updating the graduation preview report on the data gateway. So anyone that can't get to the Move It files should be able to look at the data gateway report again if you have the correct role. I have an update on that. So the data gateway report will either be live by the end of today or Monday. There's currently the ticket for it to go through, so it's almost ready. So again, that's to view your final grad rate data. It's not released to the public, so LEAs get the chance to look at it first. It will be released though after Thanksgiving. And then we will put up reports on our website. We will update the Tableau dashboards, and that will also have the LEA and school grad rate data. Next slide. So just going over reports, as I mentioned on the last slide, the graduation rate preview report is the one that we recommend you use for reviewing anything official with graduation rates. That is located once you log into Data Gateway and you have the correct role. I believe it's the LEA graduation user role. Under the My Tools drop-down, that report will show up under the graduation subtitle. That's also where the Uzi report is found, and there's also the high school feedback report. So if you don't have that role and you should, you can contact your LEA admin. You can also contact someone on our team, but that is how you would view your grad rate data. You can also look at the Move It files that I talked about. Those have already been sent. So those are already there if you have access or somebody in your LEA has access and can send those to you. The Data Gateway report is one file. If you scroll to the very bottom, that's where all the totals are. The Move It files, it's the same data, but there's two files. One file is your aggregate grad rates by the district or charter level, and then it has it by school or campus. And then the student level file has all of the student exit codes, high school completion status codes, so you can look at it both ways. This was based off of what LEA has finalized in October, so anything that you find wrong on our end, you would want to contact us immediately. However, if it's due to you not getting something updated in time, then that's final. We can't do anything about that at this point. The final report that I'll mention is the graduation rate for four-year report. That's a year-round UTREX report. It's not live, so it only gets updated after the three submission periods, October, December, and July. Currently, I know that it is having issues. There's a ticket in with IT. What it's supposed to show is students in the current cohort. So right now it would show 2026 and then the future cohorts after that. So it should show four cohorts. But I believe that is not functioning properly right now. So I would not recommend relying on that. But we are trying to get that fixed. Next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so that's all I have about graduation rate data. Are there any questions? Okay, and if you think of any questions, you can reach out to me on the side. Otherwise, I'll turn the time over to Riley. Thank you.
Hi, I'm just going to provide a quick update on the SOAR report. So the expected timeline for the SOAR report is, first of all, it uses data from the October 1 submission that just happened for school year 26 and assessment data from prior year, school year 2025. It has to wait on the graduation data from last year as well as the December load of the ACT data to be complete, and then we can run the report, and it's usually ready in December or January, and we expect the SOAR report to be available to LEAs via the data gateway in January, and we'll provide an announcement once that's ready. And then I'm going to be providing a little bit briefer of a training that was done last year in maybe June, or last school year in June, about troubleshooting invalid addresses and invalid district of residences. Clarissa's going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the validations right now, but this information generally holds true. And this is also in the context of the school district review program that is coming up soon. Next slide. So how to fix invalid addresses. So the first step is to verify the physical addresses for spelling, for completeness and accuracy, and also confirm with the family that it's correct as entered. Sometimes there's mistakes. That's just like the first basic step. And then the next thing that has to be done is that you have to confirm that it's valid via the UGRC, the Utah Geospatial Resource Center. And you have to check using both the city and the zip code separately, because sometimes the city is written and the zip code is not what matches the city. And so you have to check with both of those two separately. And you can do that at atlas.utah.gov. You can also use their API, but this is like something that we use for like troubleshooting. So like kind of spot checking one by one. And if it's not recognized by the UGRC, then you have to enter GPS coordinates or a geocode, and you can get those geocodes from the Google Plus website. And then how to fix invalid district of residences. You have to, once again, validate the address via the UGRC. So that is step one. You have to do that for the district of residence, or invalid district as residence validation. So ensure that it's also where you're physically expecting it to be, because the the UGRC will often, or not often, it can take an address and say, oh yeah, this is a valid address, but it's like, 50 miles away from where you were thinking it was going to be, and that might be why you're getting an invalid district of residence error. So after you validated it and know that it's where you're expecting it to be, you're going to use the UGRC's school district boundary map to find the correct district of residence using that validated address. And that validated address will pop up on the Atlas website, and that's the address that you're going to want to copy and paste. And then you'll see where according to the boundaries that have been submitted to the UGRC, that address is physically located. And you have to use this particular boundary map because that one references the database that they keep up to date. There are other district boundary maps floating around, but those are not the ones that you want to use. Okay, questions. Do invalid address warnings need to be fixed before the December 1 submission? So Calista will be talking about this. If you have currently an invalid address or invalid district of residence warning, then you need to actually treat it as a fatal. There's something wrong with the validation, and it will become a fatal. And so they do need to be cleared before the December 1 submission, or they will block your students. The last step is rare if the Utah UGRC is misassigning the city for whatever reason. You can use a GPS or a geocode to match the correct district of residence. Next slide. And then this is one of just like the important things. If there's a boundary that has changed, which we have noticed there have been some boundary discrepancies since these validations have come into place, they need to get updated. So UTRAX validates the addresses and district of residence data against UGRC. And if there's been any changes that have happened to boundaries that have not been reported correctly, then the UGRC may not be up to date with the latest boundary data. As a note, there are two places that need to be updated when district boundaries change. The first is the state of Utah, and the second is the federal government. For updates to the state of Utah, USB does not handle them. There are a few codes that I have linked that describe who is updating them, who's responsible, and what it is. But essentially, a boundary actions form is used, and that's submitted to the lieutenant governor. Once the UGRC receives the appropriate documentation, they can make the boundary updates relatively quickly within a week or so. And if you have any questions about this, you can contact UGRC as recommended working with your district's attorney to start with. And they've also provided a contact at the Lieutenant Governor's office. And then the second update that happens is to the federal government, and that is done annually through the school district review program. And USBE does handle this. So districts have to submit changes to USBE so they can be reflected in the Census Bureau School District Review Program. That program's used by the federal government to distribute funds. It doesn't involve any school boundary changes, just actual district boundaries involving two or more districts. So the memo usually goes out early to mid-November. It was actually sent this morning, and I have actually received 2 emails so far. So good job to some of your LEAs, BAs, and superintendents who have responded. And those requests are due to USBE by December 12th this year. If you are aware of boundary changes that have happened and know that they need to happen to the federal database as well, please make sure you reach out to your superintendent or your business administrator to make sure that they get that information to us. You can also, reach out to me and include them in the email. But that is an important place where the boundaries need to get updated as well. And then just a reminder, please check your boundaries. Does something not look right? Is your city a city, or is your district a citywide district? And did your city incorporate any previously unincorporated county lands? Do you expect those to also be the same for your district? Did you swap land with another district? Did your county make any adjustments, and is your district a county-wide district? So just check in with the personnel at your district or your city or county to see if there's any historical changes that didn't get reported to the correct agencies. And then I'm just looking at the chats. Callista is going to address this later. I think I will let you handle that, Callista, if that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it off then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, now we're shifting gears, but also I still will be addressing all of the address validation, district of residence questions. So we can go to the next slide. These next set of slides are geared towards training for the December 1 finalized submission. So first off, if anyone is not aware, please note that the deadline is coming up. It's especially important because next week we have the Thanksgiving holiday, and the finalizer gets turned on the Monday after Thanksgiving on December 1st. So it is approaching quickly. So the deadline to finalize your December 1 data is Monday, December 8th. The reason for that is because the deadline is actually the 7th, but it falls on a weekend, and so that's why it is the 8th this year. It is by 5 p.m. Just as a note, I'm sure most people have experienced at this point the submission times are, you know, pretty bad. So it's been rough for everyone. And I would just take that into consideration with your finalized plans. You do have a full week, December 1st through the 8th. I would definitely try to finalize before the 8th, because if nothing else, at least you got something in. I would not wait until the 8th to get your first submission in, especially if you are a bigger LEA or district. The submission times, we just, at this point, we cannot count on you doing a submission Monday morning and it getting through by 5 p.m. And unfortunately, knowing that, I just want to encourage everyone to please make sure that you finalize before the 8th. And then if there's time, you can always keep working on it and try to get in, a refinalized submission if needed. Historical updates, as always, are due 2 weeks prior. We don't see too many of those in December, but the deadline for those is this Monday. And that's just if you needed a historical update done prior to finalizing your December data. Otherwise, you can continue putting those update requests in all year long. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are announcements specific to this year. We started doing the courtesy data reviews early, which I'm really glad that we did that, just because of all the issues that we have encountered this week. Had we waited till next week, that would have just made things even harder. So at this point, I can report that we've done reviews for everyone except for 12 LEAs, and those are mostly districts. The 12 that we're finishing at this point, we're just waiting on submissions and the Utrecht's overview. So it's kind of a game where we have to wait till it shows processed. And then, if an LEA starts collecting again, or if the nightly collections start, then it just queues everything up. So, that's where we're at. If you haven't received a review, you should be getting it either today or Monday. Data and statistics will be out tomorrow of the office. But at this point, if you did not get a review, especially if you're a charter, at this point you should have gotten one. Please contact the data and statistics team because maybe it went to the wrong contact, or it just didn't get to your inbox. But we want to make sure that everyone gets those. As a new thing for this submission, we did include district business administrators and charter school director contacts. That was something that we implemented that we haven't done before. Um, and that was, if you want to talk more about that, we can bring Aaron into that conversation. It's just another way that we can ensure LEAs are receiving the information that data and statistics reviews before they finalize, especially when it comes to things that affect financial counts and things of that nature. Um, and then as another announcement, this is just something to keep in mind, especially with these long submission times and the UTREX overview issues. This is not common, so I'm going to preface it with that. But it did happen at year end, so I want to just make sure that everyone is aware. Another possible consequence of starting a new submission before the previous one is done, meaning that maybe your nightly submission was still queued and then you started a new manual one. A consequence possibly is that data could be lost in the processing. We saw that specifically happen with incident data at year end. Again, this isn't common. We don't expect this, but please just note that while it is painful, we recommend that you wait till your submission fully processes. And to answer the question in the chat, yeah, I mean, you don't have to. There's nothing stopping you, but based on what I'm saying, I would recommend that yes, you wait till it shows processed. I think it is possible to cancel it at a certain point, but rather than just start a new one when the old one is still going, I would recommend waiting. All right. Is there any way to remove a collection from the queue? So that is a Cliff question. I know from my own past experience, it's possible up to a certain point. Once it hits a certain point in that, in the various steps of processing, we can't cancel it. But Cliff, do you want to, is Cliff here?
The developers have told me no, that they don't have a safe way to be able to exclude one out,
Okay.
or
So
to be able to take
once,
somebody out of like the priority. So, for instance, if somebody was in the top of the queue, we can't take them out. We can't skip it. We just have to wait for it to process.
okay. Okay, so there's the answer to that. Okay, so yes, we are definitely aware of all of those issues. Next slide. Okay, part this is partially related to the submission time issues and partially a separate topic. But thanks to Iron District for reaching out. We did start seeing this across lots of LEAs, but Iron reached out early to notify data and statistics that they were seeing issues with their level 2 invalid address errors, and we definitely saw that occurring. And then the more LEAs that we reviewed, we started seeing it across the board. So that's just a plug. We appreciate when LEAs notify us of bugs, invalidations, because then we can get those to the UTREX team to address faster rather than, the day of the deadline or something like that. So at first, the issue was that it appeared that students that had geocodes or the GPS coordinates entered, that wasn't actually being validated, that it was still taking the physical address one and then showing it as a level two error, which we knew was incorrect. In the midst of trying to resolve that issue, a different issue popped up yesterday, I believe, where then we started seeing um, district of residence errors that, were not truly errors coming up. That seemed to be sporadic. We did not see that across all LEAs. And then an additional third issue was that then we started seeing those two validations showing up as warnings on some LEAs and errors on other LEAs. All of that is on USBE's end. Part of it is timing. It depends when you last submitted. I also want to throw out there, it is possible that you really do have those errors. And I realize that it's hard to know the validity of the error when there are issues going on, but if you're looking at it and there really is something to fix, then you would obviously want to fix that and not just assume that all level two address and district of residence errors are erroneous at this point. I also want to say if these issues are not fixed, by next week, we would not have these validations continuing on December 1st when the finalizer gets turned on. We would basically turn them off or turn them all to warnings so that it's not going to affect your December 1 submission. Unfortunately, I don't have more information as of today. We will let you know before December 1st. Every day, I just keep getting more new information. I know the Utrecht's developers are shorthanded and that they're working continuously. They know this is a big problem and they're working on it. I don't know, Cliff, if you have anything to add or if that is covers it.
I can give the latest. The latest is that, again, we were working on processing enhancements to speed up the systems for the next ETL. We saw delays in speed earlier this week. We pulled back out of that to not impact speed and to get everybody to process through. We pulled back a little too far timeline wise, and that's why we're seeing some errors which we had dealt with in the past and had resolved. As of now, today, we have brought it back up to current with the correct snapshotting code to what we had in October. So that means that everything is aligned with what you had at that point, and we are not anticipating for there to be the problems that you may have been seeing is the last couple days where we ended up pulling back a little bit too far in our data snapshot. So your next collection should clean up a lot of what you have been seeing earlier this morning or again over the last 2 days. Feel free to reach out to us and let us know anything that doesn't clean up on your next collection.
Yeah, and that means not collections that are in the queue or ones that are already started, but they would have had to be initiated after Cliff's team put in that fix. Okay, I'm trying to catch up on questions in the chat. Regarding the incident data, so the if you are down to the wire and prioritizing what things you need to clear to get your finalized submission in, yes, the incident data is technically a year-end data element, and we need that cleaned up by year end. While it would be nice if you are able to get that in cleanly for December, I understand that headache and that it said in the specs they were available and they weren't. So So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay, next slide. And that is the same also for, I believe I saw another comment earlier about those S5 errors from Robert Warren. That is the same guidance on those as well, if that's what you were referring to. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is just sort of general at this point. We give this same guidance every year. The stuff that I just covered was specific to this year, so please know that this next set of guidance is assuming all things are working correctly. We understand right now there's issues with some of those errors. But in general, we would ask that you review all errors and warnings and clear what's possible, especially taking into account what we need to be required in December. We do need, we'll see how it plays out with the address and district of residence errors by the end of next week. But generally, we need those cleared if they're showing up as true errors. And that is because level 2 errors will block students. So it's not a matter of just data quality, but they will block the students. And if they're scram students, that's a big impact. So again, we'll know more next week on how those errors are looking. But that's just a reminder that level 2 errors do block students. Okay, next slide. Okay, so for December, the preschool and the K through 12 special education total counts are crucial for submitting correctly. Those are both important for funding purposes and reporting. What we look at when we do the data review is large changes between last December and what you're reporting currently when we do your review. Sometimes that can be impacted by fatal errors, so we try to wait until your data is more clean, realizing that that can affect these counts. To be included in the count, a student must have an active Scram record on December 1st. What that means is the Scram entry date should be on or before December 1st, and then the Scram exit date either is blank or after December 1st. The student must be between ages 3 and 22. The birth date in the SSID system is what is used to determine that. So please ensure that those birth dates in your SIS and SSID are matching. And then finally, a student will be excluded from the count if they are coded with the environment code P, or if they are coded as school of record no. And so we do note all of these things on your review. It may be correct that you have students coded as P or school of record no, but we just want to notify you of that and have you review it in case it is wrong. Okay, next slide. Okay, I will turn the time over to Riley to go over the next set of things on the courtesy review. Thank you.
So we also review services. So that includes time, regular percent, and environment codes. And these are important to have accurate because they're used in OSEP indicator measures. So we look for large changes or anything unexpected with how these codes are reported. For example, we usually see the majority of students in time A for elementary, more equal distribution between time A and B in middle school, and higher percentages of time C, which is self-contained in high school. If we put it in your review letter, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. We just want you to review it and your special ed director to review it as well and make sure that the data were entered correctly. And then we also look at the is 1% flag. And Malia talked about this earlier, but students reported as 1%. It's important to have these data accurate because It's used for test rostering, projecting alternate assessment rates, monitoring, and more. And we look for large changes or how anything that's unexpected with how the status is reported. I think I'm handing it off to Stephanie.
Thank you, Riley. So in December, there are a few key data points that we review for all students, not just for special ed. We'll go over this in the next several slides. Homeless counts are required to report in December for funding purposes, which describe student homeless situations. The status code should be between 0 and 5. Enter 0 for students not homeless. Don't leave it blank, otherwise it will become fatal errors at year end. When we review LEA's December data, what we're really looking for is any big change, such as increase or decrease in your count compared to the same time last year. Another case is that if you reported a number greater than 0 last year, but none this year, or vice versa, we'll flag it for you to verify as well. Next slide, please. Immigrant counts also need to be reported in December for funding purposes. A student is considered an immigrant only if they meet all three criteria. They are between 3 and 21 years old. They were not born in any U.S. state, and they haven't attended one or more schools in any state for more than 3 academic years, and those years don't have to be consecutive. For reporting, you will use two codes. Y for students who meet all immigrant criteria and leave blank for the rest. Next, please. Here are some assessment data points that we review in December, even though they aren't required to be reported until year end. These include test and intervention statuses for the beginning of year Acadians reading and math. Starting last year, LEAs are required to report kindergarten along with grade 1 to 3. That means a lot of student data needs to be entered for Acadians tests by year end. The purpose of this review is to remind you to keep this on your radar and enter data as you go, instead of waiting until the end of the year. Because doing it at all once is painful. Remember, there are 3 test sessions in the school year, so entering data early will save you heavy lifting later. By December, the beginning of year reading and math testing should be complete for students in K-3. For rating, LEAs should have enter ROGO and intervention status. You will need to enter the correct codes for K-3 students, including alternative assessment statuses for those who didn't take Acadians. If there is no value for a K-3 student, they will be treated as untested, which will impact your participation rate. 2 reports can help you check before entering. One is the school summary cumulative report on the year-end reports, shows aggregate counts by grade level. The other report is ROGO for UGG reports, which will let you filter at the student level to find those missing statuses. Failing to report this at year end will trigger fatal errors, so please start early and keep up with data entry. Next slide, please. The beginning of year math assessment requires similar data points as reading. I won't repeat all the details here, but the same expectations apply. Next, please. Here are some excerpts from the UTrack specifications regarding BOY Acadians data fields that we review in December. Please take time to read through them offline, and you can find more detailed explanations in the full UTrack specs. Next, please. Here are some key resources to help with your December data submission. Please refer to them first and reach out to the appropriate teams if you can't resolve an issue. Please also keep in mind that the USB teams can only view your data in UTracks and cannot assist with SIS related issues. For any SIS problems, we suggest that you contact your SIS vendor help desk. I think that covers everything. I'll pass this along to Erin.
So I think we're done. Any of the follow-up questions?
I ask a question, Aaron? I'm so sorry. I was trying to type faster and it wasn't working. Do we have to do anything with kindergarten for the beginning of year normalcy or numeracy? We did it separately for the end of year, so we may have till the end of year, but I noticed that normalcy and numeracy are on December 1. It just still shows 1 through 3.
I'll let Stephanie answer that one. I believe it's okay, but Stephanie, can you answer that?
You may leave them blank for the BOY. Is that what you mean?
For the December submission?
I think it's good for now because we only review BOY data for December submission. The purpose is to remind you to type in data. But if you leave them blank, I don't think it'll impact your December funding. But you need to type them in by the year end. So that's my
No, my
So
question is kindergarten.
kindergarten. I think we need to type in kindergarten along with K to 3. But if you leave them out, leave them blank for December, I think it's good. Calista, please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, yeah. So the answer about kindergarten is yes, kindergarten is required. That change is still valid. So everything that you reported for first grades 1 through 3 is now required for kindergarten. So that's the three statuses for early numeracy and reading, as well as the intervention data. And then what Stephanie was saying is that while we do mark it on your courtesy data review as a non-respond item, it's simply a courtesy because we will not review your data again after December until July, when all of that data is technically due. And so because we've had the beginning of year testing, we're reminding LEAs that have not entered those beginning of year statuses, kindergarten included, that it's easier to get that done now rather than wait to do everything beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year in July. So no, it's not going to stop you from finalizing if you don't have it entered. But yes, kindergarten is required, as well as grades 1 through 3 in UTracks.
Hopefully that answers your question. So best practice, yes. Won't stop you if you don't get it, but there'll be no review for it. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Again, we appreciate all the work that you guys do. Have a wonderful day. Hopefully you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And we'll talk to you later.